When I first moved into Maple Hollow, it seemed like the kind of neighborhood people bragged about in small-town papers. Quiet streets, trimmed hedges, dogs barking only at mailmen. I rented a small single-story house at the end of the cul-de-sac, shaded by an old oak that creaked in the wind. It was late autumn. The air smelled faintly of rain and chimney smoke. The first few days passed easily. I unpacked slowly, stacked my books in uneven piles, and tried to convince myself that this was a fresh start. After a bad year in the city, noise, layoffs, and too many people pretending to care, I was ready for silence. But silence has a way of revealing things you never planned to notice. I met my neighbor the second night. He was watering his small patch of grass, even though the air was cold and damp. "Evening," he said, voice calm but oddly flat. His name was Raymond Cole. Middle-aged, trim beard, always wore a pressed shirt, even when he was just outside collecting mail. There was something methodical about the way he did everything. The hose coiled perfectly, the gate latch always clicked shut twice. "Just moved in?" he asked. "Yeah, last weekend." He nodded once, studying me for a second too long before smiling politely. "Welcome to Maple Hollow. It's peaceful here." Peaceful was the right word. Maybe too right. Over the next week, I saw him often. Early mornings, late nights. He walked his dog at strange hours, usually when the street was empty. A quiet black spaniel that never barked. I once saw him pause under the streetlight and just stand there for minutes, staring down the road like he was waiting for something that never came. At first, I thought nothing of it. People have habits. But then I began to notice small things. One morning, a thin scratch appeared on the side of my mailbox, like it had been pried open and then carefully closed again. My trash bin, which I always kept behind the gate, was moved 6 inches closer to the curb. The lid was slightly open, though I hadn't taken it out yet. I tried to reason with myself. Probably kids, maybe raccoons. But Maple Hollow didn't seem like the kind of place where kids or raccoons dared to cause trouble. Then, the pets started disappearing. First, Mrs. Langley's tabby cat went missing. Then 2 dogs from the far end of the street. Flyers popped up on lampposts, bright against the gray morning fog. Each time, Raymond was the first to help. He'd knock on doors, offer to check the woods behind the neighborhood, and organize little search groups that never found anything. When I asked if he'd seen anything strange, he smiled faintly. "Probably coyotes," he said. "They come close when it gets cold." But I'd lived near woods before. Coyotes don't open gates and leave them neatly closed again. At night, I started hearing noises through the wall we shared between our garages. Soft scraping, a rhythmic tapping like metal on wood. Once I thought I heard a low hum, mechanical and steady, running for hours after midnight. I'd press my ear to the drywall, holding my breath. The sound would stop the moment I did. Weeks went by. The unease built quietly, like dust gathering in corners. I stopped sleeping well. The smallest noises snapped me awake. My hands shook when I made coffee. Still, I tried to stay rational. I didn't want to be that new neighbor who imagined things. Then one evening, I saw him again. He was kneeling beside his garbage can, rearranging the contents, neatly stacking Tide bags, pressing them down with both hands. The streetlight flickered, and for a second I caught his face in the half-glow. He wasn't blank or focused. He was smiling. A small, private smile that didn't belong to someone cleaning up. I told myself to look away. I didn't. Later, when I walked past his driveway, I saw something lying near the drain. A small leather collar, no tag. I froze. The black spaniel was gone that night. I never saw it again. A few days later, he started leaving early. Around 4 a.m., his car would hum to life, then return just before sunrise. I tried to peek through the blinds, but he always parked perfectly straight and moved with quiet precision. No wasted motion, always calm. One night, curiosity won. I stayed up, lights off, waiting. At 3:47 a.m., the sound came. A faint whirring, then the garage door next door lifting. I slipped outside in my socks, the cold pavement biting at my feet. The moonlight gave everything a pale edge. I crouched by my fence and watched through the slats. Inside his garage, he was wearing gloves, thick ones. There was a table against the back wall covered with small containers, tools, and what looked like sheets of notebook paper lined with numbers and sketches. He moved slowly, methodically. He wasn't fixing a car. He was cataloging something, measuring, writing, cleaning. The hum came from a portable generator near the wall. Then he did something that chilled me more than anything else. He picked up a camera, a small one. He pointed it at the wall and took pictures of several pinned notes and what looked like maps. I caught a glimpse of circles, arrows, and tiny symbols drawn in red ink. When the flash went off, I ducked. My heart slammed against my ribs. I barely made it back inside before his garage door started to lower. I locked every window, sat in the dark, and waited until the sky began to pale. The next morning, I walked to the mailbox pretending everything was normal. Raymond was already outside, trimming his bushes with perfect, even snips. He looked up and smiled. "Rough night?" he asked. "Didn't sleep much," I said. My voice came out thinner than I meant. "Too quiet sometimes, makes the mind wander." That night, I decided to document everything. Every noise, every time he left, every strange thing I noticed. It gave me something to hold on to, something logical. But the more I wrote, the more the pattern formed. Dates, times, places where pets vanished, when he was out. They lined up too neatly. I started to think about calling the police, but what would I say? My neighbor trims hedges too carefully and walks at night? They'd laugh. So I made a plan. If I couldn't prove anything, I'd at least know the truth. I bought a small motion camera and hid it inside a broken planter near our fence, facing his garage. It was stupid and risky, but I needed to see what he was doing. For 3 nights, nothing. Then on the 4th, the footage captured him leaving with 2 bags, large, heavy, double-wrapped in black plastic. He placed them carefully in his trunk, looked around once, and drove off. He came back 40 minutes later. Empty trunk. My stomach twisted. I wanted to throw up. I copied the video to my laptop and deleted it from the camera, afraid he might find it. But that same night, the fear became something worse. At around midnight, a soft knock came at my door. 3 gentle taps. I froze. My porch light was off. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The knocking came again, slower this time. Then silence. I waited for what felt like hours. When I finally looked through the peephole, the porch was empty. Only a faint shape near the edge of the step. A folded piece of paper. I opened the door just enough to grab it. Inside was a single line, typed, not handwritten. "You shouldn't watch people when you can't understand what they're doing." I sat on the floor, shaking. He knew. Somehow he knew. The next morning he greeted me like nothing had happened. "Morning," he said, lifting his mail. "Lovely day, isn't it?" His eyes were calm, empty, like the message had come from someone else entirely. That was when I realized what kind of person I was dealing with. Someone who could mask everything behind politeness. Someone who studied reactions, not feelings. For 2 days, I barely slept. Then I decided to end it. I left the house just after sunset, pretending to go for a walk. When I circled back quietly, I saw his garage light was on again. I crept closer, heart pounding so hard it made my vision pulse. Through the small window, I saw what the notes and sketches were. Not maps of the town, but floor plans, houses, our street, each one labeled with times, names, pets. Mine was there too. He had written, "Observes often," beside my address. There were jars lined up on a shelf. Nothing gory, but strange. Filled with bits of cloth, buttons, pieces of collars, and small items like house keys and lighters. Tokens. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. But my shoe hit a loose rock. It clicked against the pavement like a tiny gunshot. The light flicked off. For a moment, the world went dead quiet. Then his voice came from the darkness. "You shouldn't be out here this late." I didn't answer. I ran, straight into my house, locked the door, and called the police with shaking fingers. They arrived 10 minutes later. By then, his garage was spotless, nothing out of place, just tools, paint cans, and a small radio. He stood calmly beside them, hands in pockets, smiling faintly like this was all a misunderstanding. They didn't find enough to charge him, my word against his. But after that night, he changed. Not openly, just quieter, more distant. His car stayed parked. The lights went off earlier. He never spoke to me again. A month later, a moving truck pulled up. He was gone by morning, no forwarding address. The house sat empty. For weeks. Then a new family